So I came across this video while I was scrolling through. It's called Big Pharma. I believe he goes over the Ozempic. There's another one. There's Ozempic, and there's another form of this drug that one of them they tried to put me on. So I figured, why not? I'll watch this and let's see what he has to say.
2 years after the very public failure of the COVID vaccines, that more people in this country would be skeptical of brand new pharma products. And maybe they are, but they don't seem very skeptical of Ozempic, which is a diet.
Now, if you look into this Ozempic, a lot of people are having their effects from it or the good results or whatever from it completely reversed, and they're gaining more weight than they lost in the initial Ozempic life.
Diabetes drug that apparently, at least in the short term, can help people lose weight. And on one level, you can see why they're not skeptical. This is a very fat country. That's a huge problem. And a lot of people, a lot of us, would.
If you're watching this and you don't know my story, I lost 150 pounds going vegan. I was previously on keto carnivore prior to that. And my health went way downhill after about a decade of doing that.
Wouldn't mind losing 20 pounds by taking a pill. So why shouldn't we? Well, we thought it'd be interesting to hear the other side, a side that you were not hearing on the question of Ozempic from someone who knows a lot about it. Callie Means is the founder of TrueMed. He once worked for Pharma. He definitely does not now. And he joins us today in studio. Callie, thanks so much for coming on.
Pumped to be here, Tucker.
So you want to lose 20, and I'm speaking from experience, you want to lose 20 pounds, you don't really want to stop eating pizza.
I mean, nobody does. And really, if you look at the high carb, low fat life, you really don't have to stop, but you do have to drop the fat.
Seems like a super quick way to get healthier. Why wouldn't you take Ozempic? Why shouldn't I take Ozempic?
There's three big reasons Ozempic is very problematic. And I think really the Rosetta Stone to understanding what's gone wrong in healthcare and frankly, pharma industry corruption. The first point I want to make is that if a fish tank is dirty, you clean the tank. You don't drug the fish. And in America right now,
so they won't notice.
In America right now, we've got
that's kind of what we're doing in the country.
Tank. 50% of teens and 80% of adults are overweight. And this has happened in just a generation. We didn't become systematically lazier in the past generation as Americans and frankly suicidal. Something has happened. And the core mistake of Ozempic is that obesity is not an Ozempic deficiency. Obesity is not the root cause of the problem. Obesity is one branch of the tree of underlying metabolic dysfunction that's ravaging our country. As we talked about, with over 50% of Americans having prediabetes now, 33% of young adults.
I mean, we really have to look at what is in what we're eating. These preservatives, the stuff in the sky coming down, the sunscreens. I mean, just the complete, annihilating of just stuff coming into our atmosphere. It's nuts.
Most Americans have prediabetes?
Oh, it's by some measures is up to 60%
of the whole country?
Of adults and 33% of young adults and teens. And you have a diabetes doctor, just a generation ago wouldn't see one child in their entire careers with diabetes. Now, diabetes, which again is cellular dysfunction, is cellular disruption.
In the China study, if you want to read that, I might have it linked down below. If not, I'll try to remember to put it down there. They reviewed basically like 1 million Chinese people, and they could not barely find anybody with diabetes. And now, if you look at the Western diet that they're eating, now all of a sudden they have diabetes like we do over here.
Totally caused by environmental factors and what we're eating. That's close to becoming upwards of 50% of kids. It's 33% and growing radically. Teens, 25% have fatty liver disease, which is something you only used to see in elderly alcoholics.
And that's actually what I got from the keto diet.
So there's a metabolic health crisis that's caused by decisions, right? The USDA, which is completely corrupt, the guidelines that set nutrition standards, 95% of the guideline committees paid for by food companies, they say that a 2-year-old, that 10% of their diet could be added sugar. We have more.
Walter Kempner, Dr. Walter Kempner, look him up. Rice diet. He had people on rice, sugar, fruit, and fruit juice, and he cured people 100% of the time with diabetes. 100% of the time. Dr. McDougall, if you go on his program, most people are off all their diabetes medication in 12 to 14 days, and he is on high carb, low fat. This sugar thing is so annoying.
More money from agriculture subsidies in America today go to cigarettes, go to tobacco than vegetables. 90% of subsidies go to highly processed food. We've propped this industry up. Food stamps, right, which 15% of Americans depend on for nutrition. 10% of all food stamps funding goes to soda. We're the only country in the world that allows that. So we have
to soda.
Goes to soda. So it's the
U.S. government
blaming
drink
the
soda?
wrong thing here. This is the issue. The fat and sugar, when they combine, they cause a lot of issues.
The U.S. government, direct from the federal treasury, more than $10 billion per year go from the federal treasury to soda companies through the food stamp program. The number one item purchased with food stamps in America is addictive diabetes water.
It does not cause diabetes. This is the problem. You got this quote expert on here that doesn't know what he's talking about.
Prop that up with food stamps. As we talked about last time, I actually used to work and consult with Coke, and we paid the NAACP and other groups to say it was racist to take that away. We totally rigged the debate. So through a corrupt system, we actually subsidize soda. We do 10 of these things, right? We do 10 easily identifiable things that are causing us, frankly, to be poisoned. And instead of talking about the root cause, we're saying that a weekly injection that you have to take for your entire life that costs $20,000 per patient when 80% of American adults are overweight or obese, we're saying that is the answer for obesity. We have a dirty tank, and pharma has basically changed our...
This is so irritating, so irritating. You think that they're going to tell you something that's true, and they don't. They never do.
Since it's reality to say, you know, when all these things are happening all at once due to environmental factors,
I lost 150 pounds eating bananas, watermelon, dates, salads with avocado on it. 150 pounds. And when I would go for a long bike ride, I would add sugar to my water. Losing weight like effortless. The reason I actually added avocado in, because I was losing 2 pounds a day. And everybody's like, well, you weren't eating that much. I was eating a ridiculous amount. I was eating like, I don't know, probably 40-ish bananas a day, 1 to 2 pounds a day today. I mean, it was a lot of food.
Savior. You do the math on $20,000 per patient, 80% of American adults. We're talking, and this is clear on Wall Street, food stocks are going down, pharma stocks are going up because they're doing cartwheels on Wall Street. This is on track because of government funding, because we stand to put trillions of government funding into this drug to be the most successful drug in American history.
So what, wow, there's a lot there. But let me just get back to the individual decision to take or not to take this drug.
Now, I'm not saying Coca-Cola is a health food by any means. It's got phosphoric acid in it, which is like a pH of 1.5. That's not good. But to blame sugar when all of the doctors, look at Pritikin, look at Kempner, look at McDougall, there's a lot of doctors, okay, previous that proved that sugar wasn't the problem. They did a study with women where they added 1,500 calories a day on top of their additional what they were eating to their diet of just straight sugar. And these women didn't gain more than 1/3 of a pound over 3 months. It's not the sugar.
So you're overweight, you have pre-diabetes, and your doctor says, you know, what you would say, which is that's a very serious thing to have. Just because it's common doesn't mean it's not bad. It is bad. And this drug can cure it. Why wouldn't you do that?
It segues really well into the second issue why Ozempic is so problematic. So on a societal level, you know, I think anyone that agrees, you know, if you're just looking at this issue, you know, putting everybody and pumping everyone with Ozempic for their lives isn't the first thing you do to solve obesity. But even if it was perfect, even if it was perfect, but the problem is when you get to the individual level.
I'm actually going to put a chart in here because if you look, the consumption of sugar has gone down drastically since 1980, but obesity has not gone down drastically since 1980. It's gone up. The use of artificial sweeteners has gone up drastically since 1980, along with obesity. It's not the sugar.
this drug medically is a absolute disaster.
Medically,
it's a disaster. So all you need to know is that Novo Nordisk, the company that makes this drug, recently passed LVMH to become the most valuable company in Europe. So this company, most valuable company in Europe, they don't allow this drug for obesity in Europe. Almost all of Novo Nordisk's revenue is coming from taking advantage of Americans. This is not.
I mean, that's nothing new. That's nothing new. America allows anything. Look at what's in our water. Look at what is in our food. If you look at just Heinz ketchup, for example, if you look at Heinz ketchup from America to Europe, I'll put a slide or a picture of it here. It's insane, the difference.
Not the first line of defense for obesity in any European country. It's not approved by the government regulators. They are saying on their stock calls that all of their growth is coming from the US. They're taking advantage of a broken US system in the United States. And when you dive into it, even people in the United States who are getting government funding, insurance funding for this drug don't have to pay for it. 30% of them go off the drug within 3 months. So even though they're fully being paid for it and we're being told this is a lifetime drug, there's lawsuits coming.
Lifetime drug. Who wants to go on something for a lifetime when all you got to do is remove all the fat and protein out of your diet? And all the keto and carnivore warriors are going to come on here and say, well, you just got to go carnivore. No, I did that.
Just reported in the past couple of days on gastrointestinal issues and stomach paralysis. The drug itself essentially is stomach paralysis.
What is stomach paralysis?
The drug.
This drug literally comes from Gila monster. It literally is a toxin that they extract from animals and they put it in a thing and then you take it and it's a toxin.
What it does is essentially it sterilizes its stomach, paralyzes your stomach to make you not be able to process food correctly. And there's studies now saying that stomach paralysis, the really messing with your ability to digest food, actually stays after you go off the drug. So there's lawsuits now with people with severe gastrointestinal issues after coming off the drugs that's being pronounced, and that's coming out in lawsuits. Additionally, because of that
all makes sense. Yeah, let's go on something that permanently paralyzes my stomach. Sign me up for that. Let me just keep having my chicken wings and Kentucky Fried and you know, with my paralyzed stomach.
You're consistently seeing patients who go off the drugs gain the weight back. So that's almost I think universally accepted even by Novo Nordisk.
It's just like The Biggest Loser. Most of those people gain the weight back and like another 15%.
Go off the drug, you gain the weight back, but again, we're seeing most people that take the drug within the first year come off it because the gastrointestinal issues, the stomach issues are so pronounced.
Wegovy, that was the name. That's the one that they gave me. I looked into it. I'm like, no, I threw it in the trash.
Additionally, the EU, again, where this company is based, just launched a probe into suicidal ideation caused by Ozempic. You can't even make this up. But the EU is doing a massive probe because there's so many reports of increased depression and increased suicide. Now, I was debating a Harvard doctor about 6 months ago, and I brought this up because it's kind of obvious. Your serotonin, what produces your contentment and happiness, 95% is made in the gut. And again,
but you got paralyzed gut now, and I can't even. It's nuts.
Essentially is gut dysfunction. So when you mess with the serotonin and mess with the gut, a lot of unexpected things happening. And very understandably, and really what's to be expected, is we're actually seeing reports of a mass increase in mental health disorders and even suicidal ideation from Ozempic. You know, kind of you just back up and ask, you know, this miracle drug is too good to be true. It's really coming through.
Wait, so you're saying there could be a downside? It's not perfect?
30% of people. But I want to say this, and I'm a libertarian. You know, I think people should be able to take Ozempic. I think most drugs should be legal, frankly. The problem is where the rubber really hits the road is there is an all-out assault to convince us that this is the appropriate drug. Again, this is the target.
Of course there is. How many trillions of dollars did they stand to make from this stuff?
Market. This is why the stocks are popping and why Wall Street's going crazy. It's the biggest TAM, the biggest target market for any drug in American history. It's 80% of American adults. But it's being fast-tracked. You wouldn't believe this. But the American Academy of Pediatrics
There was another drug that was fast tracked. When did that happen? Like 4 years ago or something like that?
recently
How'd that work out?
said that they recommend this as a first line of defense for teens. And the study basing that decision for the American Academy of Pediatrics to say that every obese or overweight teen, which is 50%, should take this drug, was a 68.
Man, I was the only fat in 1980. We're just talking 1980 when the sugar was at its peak. Kool-Aid, all that kind of the tea with sugar in it was at its peak. I was the only fat kid. I was eating, quote, healthy. I was eating the peanuts and stuff, the healthy nuts. All my friends were having Kool-Aid. They were skinny. I was fat. Let's figure that one out. This is just ridiculous. This whole thing is so ridiculous. All we literally have to do is look at what we were eating back in the 80s, because people in the 70s and the 60s, and I did a video about that. It was mostly high carb, low fat, especially like Mike Menzer was talking about this in the bodybuilding world. Even bodybuilders were starting to go high carb, low fat.
8-week study. We had a 68-week study for a lifetime recommendation to 50% of teens in America to receive these injections.
So I guess nothing.
So it goes from like the 3 fat, like I had 1,600 kids in my graduating class. It was like one of 3 fat kids, right? And I wasn't even fat. I was huge. I started lifting when I was 12. I was just a big dude. And now 50%.
Would surprise me coming from the American Academy of Pediatrics, which seems really like a vector for badness.
Yeah.
Given their performance during COVID. However, you just still have to wonder how did that happen? That seems reckless. Like, how could a body like that, which has some residual moral authorities because of its name, how could they do that?
You are transitioning like perfectly into the third point, which is that,
Imagine that.
the reason Ozempic, I think, is such a important story in America today is because it's really, again, it's the Rosetta Stone of understanding corruption. Our institutions, particularly the healthcare industry, has completely let us down. And you just step back and think about it. Pharma is the largest spender on TV news ads. It's the largest spender. Novo Nordisk specifically is the largest spender on foundational obesity research. It's the largest spender on medical.
I mean, back in my day, the largest spenders of ads was cigarettes and alcohol. I almost would rather have that back. If you got a VCR and you look at some of your stuff that you had taped back in the day, there's no pharma ads at all. And now it's all pharma ads. And I don't really even watch TV, but when I go over to my parents, they watch TV. I'm like, my goodness, everything's a drug ad.
To medical groups like the AAP. It's one of the largest funders of actual civil rights groups. So you actually can't even believe this, but Novo Nordisk is paying the NAACP to say that not supporting Ozempic is a civil rights issue.
So you're racist if you're against giving kids a diabetes drug?
It's on the NAACP website, and the NAACP is a registered lobbyist for Ozempic, saying that you are a racist because there's disproportionate.
It seems like a conflict of interest.
Issues with obesity in certain communities, that you're a racist for not supporting government funding for Ozempic. Of course.
And the NAACP takes money from the drug maker?
They're a registered lobbyist for the drug maker.
How can the NAACP be a registered lobbyist for anybody?
They have a lobbying organization. They have to declare who their lobbying clients are. And as reported in NPR very recently, they are registered as a lobbyist for Novo Nordisk. And on their website, they're saying it is an example of systemic racism to not support federal funding for Ozempic. So this is what I saw working for pharma. You just have to ask who people trust. People trust the medical groups. They trust civil rights groups. They trust the...
That's the problem. That is the problem. That stems back from people from my generation before that who came home watching news all day, all night. And they trusted it. Has it ever been trustable? I doubt it.
Media, you have a situation where additionally, Novo Nordisk, and this is reported, has given $30 million in direct bribes to obesity doctors. You would be hard-pressed to find a doctor who treats obesity in this country who has not received some kind of donation, not research grants, but direct consulting grants from Novo Nordisk.
Like just sending him cash?
Exactly. So
how can doctors take cash from drug makers?
oh, this is what's done. The drug makers spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year in direct cash payments to doctors.
But you can't get the drug except with a script written by the doctor.
Yeah,
You need a prescription.
who take direct consulting fees from.
How can that be legal?
This is what you watch things about the opioid crisis and how the opioid completes the same.
I mean, they're giving people needles on the street in San Francisco and all over the West Coast. I don't know about the East Coast. The East Coast seems a little less into that. I mean, it's getting weird.
Playbook. I actually, when I was working for pharma, the opioid crisis was in full effect, and there was a panel in 2012, and the panel was full of outside experts recommending guidance on opioids. The head of that panel was a man named Dr. Philip Pizzo, who is the dean of Stanford.
The problem that we have with all of this is the rice diet or something like that. Now, Kempner even admitted that the diet is more fun to talk about than actually do. It's so cheap. Even with the 8,000% whatever increase in food from 2021 actually, it's still cheap. And that is the problem. It doesn't make pharma any money.
For med school at the time, he was a pain specialist. At the moment he was appointed to that panel, Stanford received a grant from Pfizer, who's one of the largest opioid makers, of $3 million for pain research. He appointed 90% of that panel, who are also conflicted, to receive direct research and personal consulting fees from opioid makers, and they relaxed opioid standards. This is exactly what's happening on obesity.
This is actually what happened with aspartame, the sweetener, artificial sweetener. It was originally, go look into this, it was originally denied by the FDA. If you can find information on this. I had done research about this before the really internet was even big. I did a research paper about this actually in college. They denied this stuff because it turns the formaldehyde in the body. It's terrible for you. And then all of a sudden, people who really wanted to go through, they got their own people in the FDA, and they started, throwing a little bit of money here and there towards the FDA. And all of a sudden, this stuff is approved.
You have Dr. Fatima Stanford, the head of obesity research at Harvard, paid tens of thousands of dollars by Novo Nordisk, just started a new... Direct. No, not to mention, of course, millions of dollars of research grants. She's been paid tens of thousands of dollars.
How can Harvard allow that?
There are no conflict of interest rules in medicine. Harvard is supporting her, and the NIH recently it came out.
If she comes out against this stuff, then Harvard's going to be told to fire her.
That 8,000 research grants went to university professors who also have a direct conflict of interest with the topic and the drug they're studying.
How can how can you be a physician, even a teaching physician, and do that? I mean, that's so obviously unethical.
It's so obvious. It's so omnipresent that it isn't discussed. I mean, you're saying this like it is obvious. It's manifestly obvious. You hear this, most Americans are outraged. This is like, you're swimming in water, you don't realize you're in water. This is how academia is. The food industry, if taking it to food, which is making us sick, spends 11 times more on foundational nutrition research than the NIH. Pharma is the lifeblood, right, of foundational scientific research in this country. And then you get to the NIH, of course, it's a revolving door between government and industry. And the vast majority of NIH grants go to pharma research. So the NIH is basically a grant-making organization, and this is just statistical, almost all.
And all the studies just point to the drug being perfect for you. I mean, it's crazy. It's just kind of like toothpaste. They'll interview 9 out of 10 until however many dentists they need to say that 9 out of 10 dentists agree with their toothpaste or promote their toothpaste. Meanwhile, the dentist is getting paid by the toothpaste manufacturer to sponsor this toothpaste. It's just nuts.
Going to research that has conflicts of interest with pharmaceutical drugs. The problem here is,
and this is why the stuff is so expensive. Not to mention that medicine heals you, drugs don't. Drugs mask. So you're never going to get off of it.
Every institution, all these institutions fundamentally make more money when we're sick. Ozempic doesn't cure obesity. It manages obesity for life, and that's a problem. Statins don't.
I'm sorry, I should have asked it at the outset. You made a couple references to it for life. Is that as advertised?
Oh, no, that's
So if I sign up for Ozempic tomorrow, the physician will tell me you got to take this forever.
Those are the instructions, yes. They admit that there's unknown metabolic problems if you go off. But that's on the box. No, this is a lifetime injection. The key thing here, Tucker, and again, getting the corruption, right? You're paying off the doctors, you're paying off the medical groups. 50% of TV news funding. I mean, I think
I've seen it.
Yeah, and there's RFK's talked about this back in the day with Roger Ailes. When 50%
the
of
worst part of this guy, most of his salary probably came from this when he was over at other station.
Speaking the choir here, but 50% of your bills are paid by a certain interest. Why didn't the news media have any curiosity during COVID why people were dying of COVID? Metabolically healthy people weren't dying of COVID. This is where the corruption and really where it all ties together.
I'm sorry, will you describe that in a little more detail?
We had probably the biggest event in American history since World War II, where we shut down the country, where we really, I think, showed our weakness just physically and mentally as Americans. American COVID deaths were substantially higher than other countries. And research, it's not argued, has come out saying that the COVID was a foodborne illness. Dying of COVID was a foodborne illness. If you were metabolic.
What? Oh, man. The lies.
You had stable cholesterol, stable fasting glucose, weren't obese. You didn't die of COVID. COVID disproportionately, overwhelmingly, even among older people, affected people with comorbidity.
At a 0.00003% death rate. The flu has 10%.
And we're a lot sicker in America.
And the comorbidities were caused by eating bad food, mostly.
Comorbidities are obesity, heart disease, diabetes.
There was a $48,000 payout for that occurrence to happen. $48,000.
Diabetes. Those are the main comorbidities. So if you did not have those, you were essentially not impacted by COVID and had an almost 0% chance of dying of COVID. So the media, though, who's heavily funded by pharmaceutical companies, didn't have any curiosity about that. Didn't have any curiosity. Maybe this is a 9/11 moment that we're not at our best as America, right? We are a sick, depressed, infertile population. Sperm count is down 50% in just the past generation.
I doubled my testosterone by adding a pound of sugar a day to my diet, a pound. And I have the blood work to show it, and I have that video out. So if somebody's going to say, well, you got to have cholesterol from meat and blah, 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 it's not true. It's not true at all. Why do you think countries who have the highest carbohydrate intake also have the highest populations?
25% of women now have PCOS, leading cause of infertility. We are having trouble reproducing as a species.
I wonder if that's on purpose.
These are all connected. And there was a moment to talk about this, but instead the media, the government institutions who are paid by pharma, pushed a pharmaceutical solution with trillions of dollars of airtime as the solution to our crisis. This was one of the greatest public policy mistakes in American history. After coming off of the worst public policy failure, I think one of the worst in American history with the COVID response on every level, keeping the bars open and shutting down the schools, to pushing an effective.
You could, but I mean, you could go to the bar till 10 o'clock and then all of a sudden the boogeyman came out.
Pharmaceutical solutions instead of root cause solutions.
And you can't go to mom and pop shops, but you can go to Target. It all made sense.
To trust pharma when 80% of the American people, their bodies are like rebelling against them with obesity, which are clearly a sign of underlying issues where Ozempic and daily, weekly shots is not the root cause. This just on its face doesn't make sense. And then you trace the corruptions. Again, Ozempic is paying off everyone. They are one of the 5 largest funders, the company itself, one of the 5 largest funders of news ads, one of the top research funders of obesity research, largest funders to university on the obesity topic. And the thing I, kind of ram home here, Tucker, is you just have to look where the money is. So if you actually look at the analyst reports that are propping up these stocks, they're assuming an increase in obesity. So you talk about all the, like the Novo Nordisk's largest company in Europe. They literally,
they're hedging their
where the
bets
money
against
hits
the
road,
American
where
public.
people are investing billions of dollars, they're assuming increased rates of obesity over the next 10 years in America.
So if you're watching this and you're one of these carnivore whatever freaks, they're hedging their bet against you. They want you on that diet. They want you. Have you ever noticed how hard those videos get pushed? I mean, think about it.
I was talking to a doctor at Harvard. They're underwriting a loan for a new obesity center where they can treat an issue Ozempic. Those loans have projections for growth of obesity. They're not projecting that increased Ozempic is going to decrease obesity. The loans that are underpinning these medical centers, if you go to any city in the country, the biggest, most beautiful building is some kind of new pediatric, obesity center or cardiology center. The loans assume increased rates of conditions. So fundamentally, we have the largest industry in the country, healthcare, not asking, imagine a leader saying, how do we?
I mean, I live in Cleveland. Cleveland Clinic is something like 18 blocks long. I mean, I might be wrong on this, so don't quote me, but it's like, it takes forever to pass. It's got its own zip code. And then University Hospitals is not much farther behind it.
Reverse obesity? How do we cure obesity? They're not asking that. They're saying, how can we actually say obesity is not your fault? Oprah, who's involved with Weight Watchers, just apologized for preaching personal accountability over the past decades. She said it's not personal accountability. We're supporting Ozempic.
That's racist.
This is becoming, obesity is becoming something.
Do you think Oprah got paid?
She's highly involved with Weight Watchers. Yeah, Weight Watchers has shifted from a personal accountability organization that it's been
blame somebody else
for decades and is now a
somebody else fed you that cheeseburger.
Because Ozempic is a better business model because you never go off of it.
This is insane. So maybe one of the reasons this is accepted, people don't see it as totally crazy as I do. I don't take Advil, so all of this seems crazy to me. But the average, say, 65-year-old person in this country is on how many drugs?
About 7.
7.
Yeah, I can attest to that because my parents are on this stuff. I keep trying. I mean, I send them. I've done interviews with these doctors. I send it over,
and not just intermittently, but like over
chronic.
Years.
Chronic. 90 plus percent of funding for medicine dollars is around chronic lifetime.
So
it's more recurring revenue.
So describe what that looks like the scale of it.
Yeah, I think again, we're so desensitized to this, we don't understand how crazy it is, how much of a failure it's been. Well, I'll give you an example. My mom.
Yeah,
so my mom was 71 and went, for a checkup and was told by the doctor.
Imagine being told this. Imagine going in any other industry. Even if you look at Nike, one of their shoes injured 54% of people who wore it and they still buy it. I don't understand. But imagine an industry I don't know, cars. Cars were very unreliable back in the day. And that is why Ford took over, because his car was reliable. And that's how he got into it. He raced somebody on a racetrack through the forest, basically. And he knew that his car was reliable. And it was not as fast as the other car, but it was going to make around the track without braking. Imagine looking at this, right? Imagine looking at this Ford that was going to make it around the ring and saying, no, I want the other one because it's faster. Imagine that. Imagine that mentality. And this is what we got with this pharma world.
Healthy. And she was actually at the time on 7 lifetime medications. So she was on, maybe a decade before, had high cholesterol, was prescribed a statin. And the message from the doctor was, no problem. Most, the majority almost of people your age are on a statin. No problem. That's a rite of passage. Then she had high fasting.
And then they brag about it.
Again,
that's when I used to have a normal job, I would go to the job and half the people were talking about how, their ailments. I'm like, I don't want to hear about it. I don't care. You don't want to fix it. Stop talking about it.
pre-diabetes, which majority of people have, metformin, one of the most prescribed drugs in the country, high blood pressure. So she has these comorbidities that are almost seen as like rites of passage. You know, it's a rite of passage for a man over 40 to be on a statin.
Yeah, I mean, people go into work and you wouldn't believe what just happened to me. Yesterday I was at the doctor. They got a week left. I mean, people brag about this stuff or like, yeah, I got this disease. And then they talk about it all the time. Instead of doing something about it, they talk about it every single day. And you got to hear about it every day. And I know we all have something like that, but my goodness.
So these were all kind of normal things. So as we've treated everything in silos, that's a lie. Heart disease, diabetes, in many ways, depression, Alzheimer's, they're branches of the same tree. We've actually lied, saying those are different conditions, seeing 4 different doctors for 4 different treatments that don't even talk to each other. So we're managing the symptoms instead of seeing those symptoms as a gift and realizing that we have a root cause metabolic crisis. That's why the more statins we prescribe, the more heart disease goes up. The more metformin we prescribe, the more diabetes goes up. The more SSRIs we prescribe, which are now 25% of women.
The higher the suicide rate goes.
We're seeing skyrocket. So we're siloing everything. And literally.
Wait, so there's so many questions.
Yeah.
So 25%.
And nobody does anything different. They just look at it, they're like, oh yeah, that's normal.
Percent of women are on SSRIs?
We have a societal dynamic where 25% of women in the United States are on a medication. And I'm not just flatly anti-drug, but this is a societal dynamic, Tucker. We have 25% of women taking something that fundamentally numbs you out from reality. And we don't even blink an eye at that. And depression, mental health disorders, anxiety, suicide. Suicide is now the second leading cause of death for young adults. SSRIs are
after drug ODs.
Yeah, and which I think could be related.
It's related.
SSRIs, you talk to any high schooler now.
I'm not laughing at the situation at all. I'm not laughing at the situation by any means, but how do we not see the correlation? How is that possible?
Prescribed like candy when
to children?
Oh, yes.
SSRIs.
SSRI prescription rates are skyrocketing among teens. You talk to any high school counselor, anyone at any high school, this is the first line of defense when a child.
I would never talk to a high school counselor under any circumstance.
Yeah, well, that's very smart. They're skyrocketing among kids, and there's actually a black box warning on SSRI's label actually saying that it increases suicidal ideation among children, and they're widely prescribed to children.
And that's fine. We can put this stuff out there.
20% of high school seniors
we're a protected industry.
Essentially methamphetamines, Adderall, which if you read the book Blitzed, actually
I had a friend growing up that was on Adderall. Wow, was that a nightmare? That was a nightmare. I could not be around this person when they were on it, and they finally gave up.
Adderall was developed by Nazi Germany as a tool for Nazi soldiers to be more aggressive, and now is prescribed widely along with SSRIs to kids.
That all checks out.
One thing, I'm trying to keep track of everything you're saying, all of which is checkable, I assume, on the internet. Statin drugs are prescribed to the majority of American men over 40?
The last rate, I think 2019, the last study I said was 45%, and I think there's reports that now post-COVID it's close to 50%.
So what's the downside of statin drugs?
Oh, there's wild
What's
research
the upside?
coming out. I mean, the highest level, just even if the drugs don't have no side effects, heart disease isn't a statin deficiency. What statins, to me, at the most important level, represent that we have a moral hazard, right? Fundamentally, when you're prescribed that statin, you're told by the doctor that you're doing something. When you're prescribed the Ozempic, the doctor, Fatima Stanford on 60 Minutes, who's paid off doctor from Ozempic, said,
these doctors have way too much power too. I went to the doctor one time because like 3 years ago, I think it was, or somewhere three-ish years ago, I was having a really hard time sleeping. I had just had my ankle replaced, and it was always causing me issues, and I couldn't sleep. I could not sleep. They tried to hospitalize me. I'm like, I can't sleep, and you're trying to lock me in a hospital. You think that's going to make any difference or like make it any better?
Throw willpower out the window. This is a brain disease. Food isn't the problem. It's a medical issue. Take Ozempic. Do not worry about what you're eating.
This is exactly what Purdue Pharma said about pain.
Yeah. So you have these messages. You have the statins, you're doing something. You now can eat what you want to eat. You wouldn't even believe this, but until 2018, and Dr. Robert Lustig, who's a hero of mine, has pointed this out.
This
an
guy.
endocrinologist at
That's your
UCSF.
hero?
The
The guy that tells you to eat a liter. I think I'm less. No, that's another one of them anti-sugar guys. Dr. Walter Kempner, look him up. 100% cure rate. It was too cheap. Nobody wants to fund that. He basically put Duke University on the map.
American Diabetes Association said that as long as you take your medications, you do not need to change your diet as a diabetic. So you literally have guidance from the American Heart Association, from the American Diabetes Association, now from the obesity industrial complex, saying that if you take these drugs, you're good. But that's a lie, because there's never been a drug in American history for a chronic condition that has lowered the rate of that chronic condition.
What's the
And on that bombshell, I think I'm going to end this. If you guys want me to react to the rest of this, let me know. This is already at 41 minutes. The video itself was 41 minutes. I mean, are we shocked here? I mean, maybe some people who watch this might be shocked. I don't think so. But people, it seems like us Gen Xers are not into this world. A lot of us. Because we were the kids that would, go out in the street, don't come back till light, till the lights are on, street lights are on. If you can find food, great. There's a hose attached to the house if you need something to drink. We don't want to see you again until dinner. So peace. That is our generation. Generation before that, I don't know what happened to them. They're into these drugs. The generation after, all of the generations after the Gen X, are just so into listening to this doctor stuff. So they've definitely got their market squared away. Us Gen Xers, I don't know how many of us are actually taking any of this stuff, but the rest of you guys, maybe this video do you some good. I have no idea. Comments, questions down below, like always, and I will talk to you in the next video.